Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. Another great week here in Washington, D.C. It was one of those special weeks for me where I got to have one of my kids up here with me. So I have my oldest boy Magnum here in Washington with me all week. You got a favorite part of the week that you want to share with anybody?
The Washington Monument.
Yeah, what was good about it?
We got to see that it was so tall.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing monument, right? And we went to the World War II Memorial too, right? That was a good one. Ran around there. All right. Hey, thanks for being here with me this week. You can go back to eating your breakfast. Go hunt. Anyways, like I said, amazing week here. I was able to split some time between being home in the beginning of the week and then up here in Washington, D.C. Starting Tuesday. I started out the week with the town hall in Stewart on Monday, though, and we actually had hundreds of people there. I stayed for about 3 hours so that I could answer as many questions as possible until basically they had to close down the building on us. So I really appreciate everybody that came out there for it. As always, we didn't always agree on everything, but we talked about a lot of issues, and that was great. And it's to be expected that we don't agree on every single issue out there, but that's why we go out there and we have the dialogue, and we do find where we have common ground. And I think the one thing that we can always say when we come away from that is that we have the chance to come back and sit at the table again. And I think we all did find moments where we did find places where we nodded our heads with each other and said, yeah, I can agree on that. And some of the top issues that I heard about were jump-starting the economy. That was a big one. Reforming our tax code, that's something that I've spoke about a lot in recent time. Everybody knows this is something that we're focusing on big time. Making healthcare more affordable and holding the government accountable. These all have to be top priorities, and for me in my short time in Congress so far, I can tell you it's something that we absolutely make a priority. Already, we've passed the American Health Care Act, as most of you know, which literally reduces health care costs for Florida families. It's going to add an extra $400 to $500 million to Florida for Medicaid. The ACA, it imposed more than $1 trillion in taxes on Americans at every single income level, and as premiums have skyrocketed, low and middle class, lower and middle class income families have struggled to keep up. This is a fact, and if we continue to go down this same path and the collapse of the ACA is allowed to continue, then nobody's going to have access to health care, and that is the reality of it. The American Health Care Act, it repeals hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes on middle and low income families and working class families. That is the fact of it. The CBO has said it will reduce premiums substantially. The CBO has said millions of people who are currently being forced to buy a product that they don't want will gain the freedom to make whatever decision is best for their family, and they're not going to be taxed. No more individual mandate, no more employer mandate. That is one of the biggest taxes on middle class and working class families. We're also in the process of working on a major overhaul to our tax code to decrease your tax burden and the tax burden on the 18th district, small businesses, everybody across there. That is the goal. I've said it numerous times. I think the best attitude that we can have here in Washington, D.C. is to say this: you do more with more. You get to do more with your money, and ask Washington, D.C. for once to do more with less. The reality is, and it's something that should never be forgotten, every single dollar that is spent here, it's your money, it's your tax dollars, it's the work of your hands, it's the fruits of your labor, and that should never be forgotten. Every single dollar that we spend here should be accounted for. There should be no waste, there should be no fraud, there should be no abuse. Any level of that should be considered unacceptable. I don't think that that's the attitude here by any means yet, and I think it's sad that that's not the attitude here, overall, that there is this allowance, that there's just going to be a certain level of waste, fraud, and abuse, and that can never be accepted, and I don't think you should accept it either, because as I said, it's your money. That's the work of your hands. That's your time away from your family when you're out there working each and every day. So I take it very, very seriously. Now, of course, this has just been a part of what it takes to jumpstart our economy, getting this regulation out of the way and other regulations. We're working to reduce federal overreach anywhere that we can, to improve our transportation, to get people back to work. We're working on these things. And that means fixing a system that really, it's far too often rigged, I would say it's rigged to only help people who know exactly how to take advantage of the system. I think that's probably one of the best ways that I could put it. And fixing Washington, I think it really starts with accountability, with transparency, which is one of the reasons for these weekly videos, so that I can try to tell people these are the things that we're working on. These are the ways that I'm working on it. And, you know, it's of course a main reason that I've continued to hold town halls, and we're going to keep doing that across the breadth of the district as regularly as we possibly can, from one end to another. Get around to as many different communities as possible, have what we call these community conversations, where we go into your community and just speak with people that are neighbors. You know, so that's one of the biggest pieces of it. You know, beyond that, in Washington this week on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, we addressed a few important issues. We unanimously passed 2 bills that I think send a very important message. The first, it condemned aggression from the Turkish president's security force in Washington earlier this year that was against peaceful protesters. The violence that was used against people expressing their First Amendment right was absolutely not acceptable, and we need to ensure that it never happens again. We also passed a bipartisan resolution that condemns the terrorist attacks in Manchester and London, and it reaffirms our unwavering support for our ally. This is something that's very close to my heart. As most of you know, counterterrorism has been a big part of my life. Studying these acts of terrorism that have affected our country and many other countries, it's been my life's work. So this is something that is very, very close to my heart. You know, of course, a resolution, it's not enough. I'm not going to say that a resolution is the end-all, be-all. We have to do more to combat the growing threat that's posed by Islamist terrorists and groups worldwide. You know, and I speak to a lot of people up here about it, and I'm happy to say there's a lot of people with some really incredible ideas on things that we should be doing throughout the Middle East and throughout the globe to combat the threat of ISIS. And I'm going to look forward to sharing some of those with you, and it's something that I get to speak about in my role on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Also in my role on the Foreign Affairs Committee, you know, I can tell you that combating terrorism, it's not just a goal for me, it's a goal for so many there. I'm on the subcommittee of counterterrorism. And one example of my work to combat terrorism is this bipartisan bill that I've been working on, the Palestinian International Terrorism Support Prevention Act. That's a long one. But this bill of mine, it proposes sanctions on foreign persons, foreign agencies, and governments that assist Hamas, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, or other affiliates that are associated with them. It's a major piece of legislation. I can tell you, following my service in the U.S. Army, I chose to go and volunteer alongside the Israeli Defense Forces because our countries, we share common ideals. I say it all the time. We share the ideals of freedom, the ideals of democracy, of mutual respect for all people from all backgrounds. Hamas preaches destruction to Israel, death to the values that we hold dear here in the United States and Israel. Hamas is a foreign terrorist organization specifically designed, and I guess the best way I could say is they're specifically designed to go out there and interfere in our affairs, the affairs of Israel, and cause as much harm as they possibly can. And it's a group that has to be brought to an end, and that's just the place that I stand on this. Beyond this bill, it's proof that confronting hate and supporting our ally Israel, it's not just an issue of left versus right. It's always an issue of right versus wrong. It's a very bipartisan piece of legislation, so I'm very, very happy about that. Finally, we passed a major bill that's going to help community banks revitalize local small businesses. The bill is called the Financial Choice Act, and here's why it's so necessary. Not just necessary, but this is probably one of the biggest bills to be passed in, I would say, at least the last 10 years. The Financial Choice Act is Dodd-Frank reform. Dodd-Frank includes more regulations than all other bills passed during the last 8 years of President Obama, during his 8 years in office. This one bill has more regulations than all of those years combined. Think about that. Every regulation that was passed over an 8-year period of time, almost a decade, including the Affordable Care Act, this one bill had more regulations in it, Dodd-Frank, and that's something that is just a tremendous amount of red tape. It made it harder for small business owners and families to work throughout the country, for entrepreneurs to go out there and get the loans from our community banks, and for people that are out there on Main Street, it hurt them. All of these regulations, it's helped put Main Street out of business. And the bill hasn't fulfilled its goal of being tough on Wall Street either. Community banks, they no longer have the resources they need to succeed. Big banks, this is a fact, big banks have gotten even bigger than they were before. So whether you were looking to open a new restaurant or open your own business, make improvements to your house, your access to funding, it shouldn't rest in the hands of just a few too big to fail banks. And that's what Dodd-Frank created, is more too big to fail banks. Community banks, they are critical for our growing economy and supporting our local community. And the Financial Choice Act does what Dodd-Frank intended to do, but in a much smarter, much more efficient way. The bill protects community banks and credit unions from burdensome regulations that were never intended to be applied to those kinds of institutions in the first place. The bill, it also imposes the toughest penalties for financial fraud ever, and it will end too big to fail by putting a stop to taxpayer bailouts for big banks. And the Congressional Budget Office, it's reaffirmed this by saying that the biggest U.S. banks would likely not get relief from the new banking rules in the legislation, while most of the banks that would opt to take advantage would be the small and the community banks. This is the way that it was intended to work. And on top of that, the bill will reduce the budget deficit by $24 billion. That is one of the biggest goals. We already talked about this a little bit just now in this video. We have to be accountable with your dollars. We have to get to the point that we are not spending money that you didn't authorize us to spend, that we're not layering debt year upon year upon year onto you, onto your children, onto your grandchildren. It's irresponsible, and we have to fight to make sure this is the case, and this is part of what that bill does. This bill, it's not what Wall Street wants. It's exactly what our local businesses and our taxpayers need. Now, as always, it's an honor to represent you in Congress. As I got to speak with a number of people last week over Memorial Day, it was incredible to be there, and just hear the way people were thinking of our troops overseas, our service members overseas, their sons and daughters that are in uniform right now, the people that they've known that have unfortunately, left this world far too early, the people that they were remembering. It's a tough week for a lot of people, where we specifically remember those that passed. I know, I'm a firm believer, every day should be Memorial Day. It should be, every day should be a time where we look at the lives of somebody that we knew and say, how can we live better today? And, but last week was that week where many very specifically sit there and have those thoughts. And so, in that, it was great to have the conversations with you all last week. I'm looking forward to getting home in a little while, seeing you all around the district this weekend, and then I'll be back up here Monday. As always, it's an honor. Look forward to seeing you all around.